to ask you about Japan, though. This is very interesting to me. How is dating different in Japan? Like, what do our traditional gender roles do they look different there? Talk to me a little bit about the dynamics between men and women there.
It's extremely traditional. The majority of women that go to college, their number one agenda is to find a husband. On the television, like, you don't have like a woman and a husband, and like the husband's an idiot and she's like, ugh, you know, my husband's an idiot, but thank God I have Tide because, you know, I've solved this, you know? And that's just not the case. Men and women get along on the television shows there. They're still like, there's commercial over there for laundry detergent, and it's like a bunch of housewives with aprons like dancing under the sun singing, right? And the women know their role and they know their place, right? And when I say that in America, like, what do you mean know our place, right? It's like immediately offensive.
Triggered.
Yeah, and it's just like, you know, it's like letters. You have to put the letters in order to make a word, right? Everybody knows their place in order to make something work. You are in a relationship with your husband, right? You don't strut around and like try to run the show 24/7. There has to be order. But these modern chicks, they want like totalitarianism. They want like to be a dictator. They want everything their way.
Yeah.
And the smallest infraction against what they desire, they take it so internalized as like, this is a personal attack against me, and you're a racist, you're a misogynist, you're a bad guy, you're transphobic, you're like, they go down the woke shameless. Yeah. So in Japan, like, it's actually customary for the date to be Dutch. Like 50-50.
Wow.
Because they know that they have to come together and get married and have children because they're still focused on traditionalism.
Does that change, like you're saying it's Dutch initially, does that change if they do get married? Does the man take on more of that financial responsibility at that point?
Yes, for sure. There is a massive traditional aspect to the relationships, to an extent that in really traditional Japanese households, the man understands he's got to provide for the family. So he actually hands over his entire salary to the mother or the wife. And then she allocates a portion of that for him to spend, and then she takes care of the children. So that's like one part of it.
That's interesting to me because when you say like a woman has to know her place, people immediately will think you're being demeaning. Right. But that's actually what you're describing as a structure where a woman has a lot of control, you know, where she knows her place as wife, mom. She's not trying to be the husband. She's not trying to be the man in the house.
Right.
But it's not like she's being disrespected. You know, there's a mutual respect that's derived from rooting themselves in those traditional values. So that's very interesting to me.
Yeah, a lot of women think, like, when I say, like, I want a woman that cooks, they think I'm going to handcuff them to the stove and be like, listen, it's stroganoff or uppercuts. Like, you know?
Right, like there's a forced component to it.
Right, and it's not. Like, you know, there's a beautiful girl that was on Valuetainment Money with us yesterday, and she was conflating cooking and cleaning with slavery as a wife.
Oh,
and
she's been brainwashed.
And I was just like, baby, you are gorgeous, but you are dumb. Like, what are you talking about? Slavery? How is cooking or cleaning and taking care of the household and somebody you love slavery? I like, if anything, you could argue that the man financially providing for a woman with the threat of divorce looming over his head, where you have to pay alimony and child support for the rest of the, in some states like Florida, I think the rest of your life, if you've been married for 10 years, right, for alimony.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you couldn't call that slavery. But if I'm like, hey, babe, can you like make a sandwich and wash the dishes? She's like, oh, I'm so oppressed. It's ridiculous.
Because women have been programmed, you know, to everything that we hear is like, oh my God, I'm not going to be a 1950s housewife. You're not going to put me backward. You're not going to take me backward. So now it's like even just taking care of a home, even just making your husband a sandwich, keeping a house clean, things that women, you know, back in the day would value and would enjoy and would appreciate about themselves. Like, hey, I want to do this. You know, this is a sign of, you know, me fulfilling my role. I want a beautiful home. I want, you know, my husband to come home and have a beautiful dinner. I want, you know, these were things that they took pride in.
Right.
They now have been taught for a very long time that those are signs of A, weakness, and B, that, you know, guys are putting you under their thumb in some way. Oppression. Slavery. That's why that word comes out. We hear that growing up as females, you know, don't be oppressed by men. Don't, you know, and it gets in your head. So that you're then sitting on a panel with somebody and she's regurgitating, there you go, misogyny, slavery. And if she really sat back and thought about it, it would make no sense.
Yeah, Miss Montana yesterday had the audacity to say I was mansplaining. I couldn't, like, it was like I was living the meme. I came here to America and a beautiful white chick told me I was mansplaining. I was just like, oh God, get me on a fucking plane out of here.
Yeah, well, that is it. And I always say, it's interesting. I bring it back to politics sometimes, but I always say in this country, it's very hard, for a man to run against a female. Because a lot of components come into play. Suddenly you're on the stage and you have to be super conscious that you're debating a woman, and the media is going to portray it every time you raise your voice as, oh, look, he's trying to oppress her on the stage. He's trying to silence her. He's mansplaining. So I always say, are you interested, do you want equality or not?
Yeah.
Because equality, if you really want it, means that you go out there and you can take the heat just like a man.
Right.
So that happens all the time. I love that when you're engaged in a debate with a female. As a guy, I watch it all the time, and a guy almost says, "Oh, you're mansplaining, you're misogynist." Blah, blah. All the words come out.
It's retarded. And if you really look at feminism, what it is, if you ever follow the roots of female empowerment, feminism, any of this stuff, it always goes back to votes or money. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. Because this all started with consumerism, right? If you think about, remember when Old Spice was just not cool? Right?
Yes.
And they were a dying company, right?
Yeah.
So what they did is they realized that the majority of people who do the shopping for men's hygiene products are women.
That's right.
So they switched the marketing to target women, and they made millions and millions and millions of dollars, turned the entire franchise around, right? The old commercial to Terry Crews and whatnot. Yeah. So a lot of companies saw this and they realized oh, wait, we should just start targeting women, marketing towards women, and making them the ones that we want to take the money from, right? Mm-hmm. But then it got to the point marketing women, it became funny to belittle men. And then, one marketing company sees a trend work, and then everybody starts seeing it, right, making it work. And then next thing you know, you have a whole culture with the music, the media, the video games, the social media, which is huge, all demonizing men. But if women were to stop and actually objectively look at what feminism is doing for them, it's extorting them.
Oh, yeah. They're miserable.
They're miserable. I mean, female unhappiness is literally, or female happiness is consistently dropping since the 1970s. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I ironically laugh at it. I'm just well, you wanted equality. Here it is,
Yeah, I think they're unhappy because they're being told to live a promiscuous life, that's somehow going to lead to happiness. And women by nature aren't programmed for that. We're just not. We're not. I don't know a single woman that went through a stage of life like that. And if they're being honest with themselves, not one of them was happy. They'll always say, oh, I was hurt. I was, feeling horrible about myself. Yes. I wasn't getting the respect that I felt that I wanted. I wasn't bonding with that guy. I felt cheap at the end. You hear it all the time. People who are actually able to have an honest assessment of what that meant for them. And it comes down to, I think, a reality that feminism has taught women that men and women need to be the same.
Right.
You can't, because by virtue of saying men are men and women are women, you have to, acknowledge that men have certain strengths that women don't have.
Yeah.
And women can do certain things like have babies that men can't do. And underlying all of that, I think, for them was the implication that women were the weaker sex. They felt like an admission that men and women were different would be an admission that women were weaker. And I always say, well, it depends. If you're trying to compete with a man and you're trying to go into the gym and lift like a man, yeah, you're going to be weaker.
Right.
But if you're going to be, if you're looking at aspects of femininity, being feminine and being nurturing, and being a mom,
right,
and bearing a child, well, that's where your strength lies.
Right.
So it's interesting. So do you feel that in Japan, how do you feel about guys who are saying now that they don't feel that they can find a feminine woman with traditional values in the U.S. and they're looking everywhere but the U.S.? Is that a wise decision in your view?
So I don't think it's just a blanket statement go to X country and then you're going to have the most awesome woman, because there are shitty women in Japan. There are shitty women across the world, right? But you have to understand what you're looking for. And this is why I talk about in Money Muscles Game Frame, the game component, right? Game helps you identify which is a good woman for a long-term relationship and which is not a good woman for a long-term relationship. Because the majority of guys, they just want one woman. The majority of guys don't want to sleep with a bunch of women. That's actually a pretty small percentage of guys.
Is that true?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I coach a lot of guys, and the majority of guys just hey, I just want a decent woman I can go home with. She will take care of me, cook, clean, do the traditional stuff around the house, right? He's going to do the traditional stuff. He's going to take out the trash. He's going to go get the leaves out of the gutter. He's going to do the lawn work, right?
Yeah.
But, again, what do you have? You hear people saying well, I'm not your mother. This guy wants a mother. And the bottom line is, it's sad to say, but it's a nation of broken women raising broken women, because you're having this chain of divorce. Because what it does is it conditions the children to be raised in this single mindset. The women don't know, they don't have a good reference point of mother and father interacting in a positive manner. They have a negative stigma.
Yep.
Add in the media, add in the music. I mean, terrible songs like Wet Ass Pussy and stuff like this.
Terrible.
Telling them, yeah, you're gonna be so sexually liberated by putting yourself out there and getting used and abused and thrown away by a bunch of men. That's how you're gonna empower yourself. This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. But they're eating it up hook, line, and sinker. So you have this kind of situation right now where I don't know. I think the smart people are going to rise above, and I think the dumb people are going to suffer, you know. But I mean, the way the system's set up right now in America, divorce laws are changing, right? I think we had the lead attorney on Sawscast the other day.
Yeah, I'm thinking about having him on too. Some folks in the chat. By the way, we're going to get to the chat in 1 second, Angel. But folks in the chat, do you want to hear from the lead attorney? Put it in there and let me see. I'll check it later. I'm curious. I let them sometimes decide who I bring on here because audience is important. You
got to listen to the audience, yeah. But the laws are changing, right? And I think people are kind of seeing the writing on the wall, like shitholes like California,
right?
Oregon,
in many respects,
Washington. New York, like, the divorce laws there, the custody laws, alimony. It's just like blatantly archaic, saying like, oh, this woman is so weak and dumb, she can't provide for herself, so we need to pay her alimony.